Welcome back, everyone, to E3 Coliseum, day one. Now we've got a really special panel. The gaming industry continues to evolve in really interesting ways, and another project that we've heard about a lot over the past couple of years, but is here in a big way at E3, is a title called Transference from Ubisoft. It's a VR project, but also going to become to traditional gaming systems, and I wanted to bring out three folks who are going to tell us a lot about Transference. So please welcome Elijah Wood from SpectreVision, who's the creative director, Daniel Noah from SpectreVision, who's the head of development and co-writer, and Kevin Racape from the Ubisoft producer. Kevin. Great to have you guys here.
Thank you. These chairs are so much bigger than they look on screen.
Super comfy, though, right? Sit back, relax.
Yeah, they are very comfy.
So we got to see you on stage yesterday, Ubisoft press conference.
Yeah.
Transference. I know we've got a trailer. Should we look at the trailer first and then
That's
maybe
a great
talk
idea.
more about
Provide
it?
some context.
Yeah, just some context. So let's take a look at the brand new trailer for Transference, and then we'll talk to these guys about how it all fits together.
Awesome.
Dad?
Just a sec, bud.
What's going on?
1 second, okay? Okay.
Where's Mom?
You're gonna see her real soon, okay? Just hold still.
Don't believe his lies.
Okay, are you comfortable? I know this rig's a bit cumbersome, but that's always the way with these new prototypes, huh? And all you have to do is just be. I know things haven't been so great lately, okay?
Some big men.
I've been a lousy father,
I'm unable.
lousy husband, too.
You should go to sleep.
You've seen how rotten that's gotten, huh? But all that is gonna change. We're all gonna be together. All of our hard work,
Reverse the process.
all of our sacrifices, that's my gift to you. Us.
Help me! Help me! Please!
Dad? Why are you doing this?
I love you, son. I love you with all of my heart.
All right, we are officially intrigued here. Now to put the pieces together, or try to. First of all, we should talk a bit about this partnership and how this all came together. Elijah, known you for a long time. You're a big gamer, a big fan of a lot. He was just chatting with Todd Howard backstage, and I mean, you know and love games, and you've been in some games, you've done some voices over the years, but now you're sort of, evolving into creating a interactive experience.
Yes.
Why was this the right time to do this? Why did you want to do this? Why did you want to team up with Ubisoft? Give us some context.
So I have a production company with my partner Daniel. We have a company called SpectreVision.
Yeah.
We've had it for about 8 years. We've produced horror and genre films. We were interested in VR. That's sort of where it started. We kind of looked at this medium. We were fans of games. We were interested in VR as a means of sort of creating horror experiences. It's so perfect because it's so immersive. Yeah. It can elicit a pretty intense, sort of reaction, physical reaction and sort of emotional reaction. And we had a mutual friend who worked at Ubisoft who knew that we were sort of interested in that pursuit, just to sort of explore what we could do in that medium. Yeah. And he was like, let me introduce you guys. And so we were at E3, made that introduction, and there was enough interest sort of on both sides to take us out to Montreal and kind of have a meeting about it and sort of pitch a few ideas and see what we can come up with, and if there was a sort of a reasonable partnership that we could create. And that's really where it started. And the very nugget of this game idea kind of came from some of those pitches.
Wow. Now, Kevin, Ubisoft Montreal makes some incredible games and franchises, and has for many years. I know there are lots of folks that would love to work with you. You have to be very selective in sort of the projects that the development teams take on. What was it about it when you met first with Elijah and Daniel about collaborating on this? What spoke to Ubisoft?
Well, from the beginning, it's a real honor working with such talented people. We're talking on a daily basis, iterating, improving on one another idea, and we had to explore the possibilities offered by both of the mediums to try to bridge the gap between the movies and games with Transference. And I guess it was a big learning process to all of us at SpectreVision on how to make games and at Ubisoft on how to build engaging and deep narrative.
What was cool about Ubisoft, too, is obviously they're the giant franchises that they're known for and they're big AAA games that we all know and love. Yeah. But there's also this division there that was interested in exploring VR and sort of more, not necessarily indie games, but sort of ideas that sort of don't necessarily adhere to the triple game status. And that was exciting to us. We're interested in new ideas, fresh ideas, a different approach to the medium. And that's really what has sort of been driving Transference from the beginning is, how can we make something in VR that is a game but that doesn't adhere to traditional game tropes and really tries to feel like something fresh and exciting?
No, you said, and that's what's great is that Ubisoft does the big stuff but also does the experimental stuff.
Exactly.
Daniel, for you guys, from SpectreVision's perspective, what was that elevator pitch? I mean, we went into Ubisoft. What did you guys want to build with them?
Well, I think we started for, really honestly, I think for close to a year almost. Maybe it was shorter. It felt like a year.
About half a year in terms of like idea pitching?
Yeah, well, we would just fly out there every month every couple months, and we would just kind of look at all the VR projects that were out there, everything that existed, just to try and understand what was happening, what was working, and what wasn't. So it was really, we approached this from, I think, kind of an unusual angle, is that we started with some very basic tenets of storytelling that we felt were very unique to the VR medium. And from there came ideas for a story, and from the story came the ideas for gameplay, which is, I think, not typically how it's done. I think typically the emotional and narrative elements are kind of dialed in toward the end of the process as something that sort of sits alongside gameplay. And for us, it was very important that because we wanted to create a project that, as we like to say, feels like a movie but plays like a game, where it was all fused together right at the top. That the gameplay is, it's not driven by points or levels or, it is as though you are actually participating in the story that you would typically experience in a movie as an active player. It's all fused together.
I was going to ask about the sort of VR aspect of this, and how much was VR sort of driving the vision for this, just versus the the emotions and the ideas? I mean, was it a goal for you to do something in VR?
Well, that was the initial interest, right? So we, coming from making horror and genre films, we were interested in VR from an experiential standpoint and feeling like it lent itself very much to those sort of genres. But it was the idea partially based on technology. So this game, when you put the headset on, you're entering essentially a digital landscape of an uploaded family's consciousness. Okay. So in essence, the VR tech was kind of an inspiration for the idea anyway. That led us to think, well, what if the tech itself is sort of the genesis of us entering into this space? And what's in there? Okay, there's a family. Why is there a family? There's a scientist who's uploaded his family's consciousness. We need to understand who these people are, and that kind of extrapolated from there.
Fully immersive, as we can tell from the trailer. Raymond, the protagonist, tell us a bit about this character and sort of the backstory of him.
Raymond Hayes, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, the character played by Macon Blair from Blue Ruin and Green Room, and who directed Elijah in I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. Raymond Hayes is a neuroscientist who was sort of an early adopter of the concept of one-to-one simulation of the idea that you could potentially upload a human consciousness into a virtual space and enter it. And so he's a character who's was kind of a black sheep in the academic community. The Walter Test case, which was the playable demo that we had here last year, is not actually part of the final game. It's sort of part of the narrative universe of the game. It's almost like a prequel to the game. So the he was initially experimenting with uploading memories to walk around in, which is what the Walter test case was. And after that experiment went terribly wrong, which anyone who played the demo last year experienced firsthand, he kind of ended up going out on his own and self-financing the ultimate project of I want to take the minds of myself and my family and put them into a better place where they can live on forever.
You mentioned, doing the test cases not in the game. Like, how much has this evolved in terms of the experience and the gameplay over, the sort of creative period you guys are working together?
It's evolved a lot.
Yeah.
It's gone through, I mean, the character of Raymond Hayes has existed for a long time, very early on. The family, the notion, like the basic notion of the family being uploaded to this digital space. But the process of how we get there narratively has definitely evolved as we've learned. Yeah. I think initially there were sort of versions where we tried to stuff narrative into the context of the game for fear that people wouldn't understand what was happening. We realized, whoa, we do not need to do that. We need to strip this back. It is an experience, and people will ultimately feel things, and we don't need to tell them things. And that's been, I think, some of the most rewarding aspects of this process.
I think we ended up trimming much elements to rely mostly on the environmental storytelling. Yep. It's very important to us to let the player explore, discover, and try to piece together the mystery by just shifting between the different perspectives of these individuals and trying to, just by observing, trying to understand better their profiles and what were the exact events behind this situation.
No, and you're working in a medium, VR, where you said all game developers around the world are sort of learning about how to build experiences in this headset anyways.
Yeah.
How interactive to make it, how to do narrative, and I mean it's just the sense of discovery. I think that's what people love to sort of explore and not be spoon-fed. They want to sort of pull instead of having it pushed on them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it does feel like the Wild West VR. It feels like there's so much possibility. People are trying so many different things. There's a lot of room for innovation and new ideas, and it's a fun space to play in for sure.
So we've sort of set up the context. Talk about the player. You when you jump into this game.
Yes.
Who are you? What is your sort of relationship?
You are you.
Okay. Deep.
That was really important to us. And you could talk about this too, Daniel. But
sure.
We. Very early on, it was very apparent and baked into the concept of the idea that, because the early idea was you would sort of find a piece of equipment and it was you, and you stumbled across this family, and they would look at you and interact with you, and that was something that was really important to the storytelling. We didn't want people putting on a headset and assuming a character, because with a character comes a sense of direction. I am this cop, so this is my objective, and I have to do this. And you look at the world through a different lens. You assume that character. Yep. And we want people to bring themselves into this and thusly respond to the world the way that they would respond to it and take from it different things.
Yeah. You are a gamer sitting on your sofa with a controller in your hand and a helmet on your head, trying to help people who are trapped in a digital purgatory. You are not. Yeah, you are quite literally yourself.
And I think it was important as a means of hitting at empathy. Empathy and fear were two things that were sort of driving forces for the game, and it was the things that are propelling us forward. And we wanted, in some ways, the fear, I think, was if it was a character, there would be a separation between the family that you meet in the game and this character that you're assuming that could infringe upon the notion of empathy. So it was important that you actually do connect with these characters as you.
Talk a bit about the gameplay, because I think we all play games. We want to know how much puzzle solving is there, how much is done through dialogue, exploration.
Right.
The experience, since probably not everyone here is going to get to put on a VR headset and experience this here at E3. Walk us through sort of what the gameplay loop, for lack of a better term, is.
Well, the gameplay mechanics of Transference will feel pretty familiar to those who love narrative-based games. So you're free to explore, discover, interact with items, and at your own pace, actually. We are seeing players that want to rush and know the following of the storyline, and there are others that just want to chill, take their time, and see everything. And it's quite important because everything has a purpose to be there in the game. We thought a lot about the different items and their meaning in each of the perspective. As an example, if you find a wedding ring in one perspective and by shifting to another perspective, it reveals to be handcuffs. It's very different take on the marriage.
Yeah, and important to note, because we haven't said it outright, that one of the conceits of the game is that when Raymond uploaded his family, there was an error. So it is split into 3 perspectives. So the basic conceit of the game is that as the player, you are alternating, you are switching between 3 takes on the situation. You're viewing, you're understanding how they feel about each other, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about their environment. It's different in all 3 perspectives. And the game requires you to use empathy and emotional intelligence to understand how they feel as a means to progressing through the narrative.
Well, and that's the power of VR and games, that sense of agency of sort of putting yourself in the shoe of someone else.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Wow. So 3 perspectives sort of alternating throughout the experience. And then, even though we've talked a lot about VR, there is a non-VR version of this, right?
Absolutely. It works across all platforms, and it was obviously very important to us that, because of course it works perfectly in VR because it was designed for VR. So a lot of our focus has been to make sure that the platform is just as powerful.
We wanted to share this experience with as many people as possible, and the game has been built from the ground up for VR. Yeah. And we had such positive feedbacks last year with the Walter Test Case demo. But we just had to focus on the atmosphere, this stylish neo-noir art direction, and this sound ambience that is very important in our game. So it translates effortlessly to the traditional platforms as well.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now, you guys have done a lot of traditional media stuff, SpectreVision, doing this interactive project. What have you guys learned, or what surprised you about sort of the game development process? Because I know you've been close to some games, you've been involved, and worked with Tim Schafer and others on things. But now that you've jumped into this, collaborating with an amazing studio like Ubisoft, has anything surprised you about sort of what it takes, more iteration in games, or how rapidly you can iterate, or what has really sort of surprised you guys about the process?
What have been the surprises?
Daniel?
Well, look, I think we it's been a very fruitful partnership, because the way movies are made and games are made have some things in common and many things that aren't. So the process has been us learning from each other, and in some ways I think improving each other's processes. A lot of the beginning was us, on either side of the aisle going, why do you do it like that? Have you ever thought doing it like this? And kind of helping each other broaden our perspective on how to tell stories. So the result is what I think we feel it really is truly a movie game, like a cinema game hybrid. Right. And oftentimes in video games there's this kind of segregation between gameplay and narrative. So you play to a certain point. What's that? Church and state. Right.
Cutscene, gameplay. Yeah.
Yes, and then you unlock a cutscene which you sort of passively watch and maybe want to skip. In our game you are literally in the scene. You are participating in it. The entire thing is a playable narrative. I think that we surprised each other throughout the process by constantly suggesting new ways of approaching.
Yeah.
And even I want to ask you about sort of the script or story, because sometimes traditional media, you write the script, you go off and maybe reshoot something, but this. How sort of iterative has it been, in terms of the narrative and story working alongside the gameplay? Like, is the script, is it kind of has it been constantly evolving based on tests?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. Puzzles have evolved.
Right.
So many elements are constantly evolving. But that part of it, I think, has been also really enjoyable. I mean, like any creative endeavor, it's a group of people all working together, sharing ideas constantly to make the best of that thing that you're making.
We also have the chance to have this premium material of live action footage that we integrate seamlessly into the game. So that was a challenge to us to cherry pick the best moment and take benefit of this digital setting to build these floating UI, floating windows that you can see in the trailer. And it's very important to us because it puts the player the closest possible to this delivery of emotions.
Yeah, no, and that's live action is something that we've seen come in and out of games. I feel now it's sort of coming back in the right way, right? And especially with VR, we're seeing a lot of interesting VR projects. But what I love that you guys are doing is you see some VR, it's like it's only live action or it's only interactive. And I think that hybrid is sort of what's unique here. Was that always a goal to sort of do something that was live action but also had the real sort of game engine gameplay in it?
It was. I don't know if it was the original goal from the onset, but I think as we were developing the characters, the way it actually came about, if I'm not mistaken, when we did the Walter Test Case demo that was separate from the narrative of the game last year at E3, we wanted Raymond to introduce the test for the people who were about to play that demo. And so we cast Macon Blair to play Raymond. At that point, I believe, we hadn't integrated the notion of video content within the context of the game. But we had hired him, and we were like, he's so incredible, and we love his work. And he really established for us who Raymond is, that we had to find a way to integrate it. So that's all part of the evolution.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, it's so cool to see you guys, collaborating on this. And from SpectreVision's perspective, I mean, should we expect kind of more gaming stuff? Is this something that, after this experience, you guys want to continue to push into gaming and interactive?
We would certainly love to.
Yeah.
I mean, we have played video games all of our lives. You less so, but now you're more of a gamer than I am.
He's convinced you.
It's
all
amazing.
I do now.
Before, it's so funny because before we started this, Daniel he didn't grow up playing games.
Wow.
And we all did. And he dove in more intensely than I've ever seen anyone into one specific thing, and he plays games more than I do now. And he's like texting me, "Have you checked this out?" I'm like, "What the fuck?"
What have you got? What's anything recently inspired you, or like as you're making this game, like what have been the things that have sort of spoken to you?
I think that's always such a hard question because I think that what the influences in this game are sort of all over the map. Of course, we talked a lot about Kubrick and House of Leaves by the novel, and television and opera and various
Robert Frost.
Oh, wow.
This sounds so pretentious, my God. But less with games, and I think we really set out very deliberately to try and create something new.
Yep.
So when you're doing that, you don't necessarily have something within the medium to reference. There's certainly there were games. PT was something we looked at a lot.
We miss PT.
Oh man.
Everybody,
we all.
Yeah, but much more influences from outside.
But you mentioned PT. This game. It brings up an interesting question, which I hadn't asked you guys before, but I was thinking about is the replayability in the sense of sort of going through this multiple times. And one of the great things about PT is the sense that you were kind of exploring an environment, and when that came out, I mean the crowd sort of the crowd mind sort of trying to figure out what you could do in it. How much of that is in something like this? I think that's really exciting because sometimes people hear narrative experience, live action, like, oh, it's going to be a really fun, contained experience. But is replayability and sort of the idea of going through this multiple times, is that
we hope so. Yeah. I mean, the environment, the world is filled with narrative elements that it's all there for you to explore. So you could certainly play through the game quickly, get everything that you need to get out of it, but you can go back and you'll have seen that there's a lot of things that you've missed. Nothing in the game is superfluous.
Right.
It's all meaningful. It's all connected to these characters. And I think in that sense, you'll be able to sort of see things second, third time around that you didn't the first time.
That was where the Kubrick influence, I think, came in. We were constantly talking about Kubrick when we were making decisions, and it was the idea that what's primarily important is that the player have a very intense and profound experience, which is not necessarily intellectual. So you can play through the game and have a very strong experience without necessarily being able to explain it, which is often how it works in a Kubrick film. But within the game are layers and layers of hidden coded information. That is, they're in the objects, they're in the environments, it's on the wallpaper. There's even information hidden in the sound design that if you choose to dig deeply, all the answers are there in the game. So yes, it is designed for replayability.
Wow. Well, we can't wait to play it, experience it soon. Anything, for gamers that are going to experience or not, what do you want them to sort of take away from what you guys are sharing about Transference here at E3? Anything specific?
What I'd like to see is how they react to what we have to offer, and often I can see that they're adapting their behavior to this environment, like just leaning forward to look what's behind the corridor.
Yeah.
This is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it resonates with some kind of emotional response, unsettles people.
And also hearing about their theories.
Yes, indeed. Which we've already heard. People have told us that they've looked at objects and started to try and connect dots.
Oh wow! No,
Yeah,
and that's
cool.
what is
That's
great
what you
about
want.
projects like this is that they can affect you in different ways. And I
Yeah.
love one of the things about E3 this year. I think there's such a diversity of games, right?
Totally.
Crazy action stuff, and then other really thoughtful pieces, thought provoking. And then you look at like Death Stranding's trailer last night and what you guys are doing, and it's stuff that
I
just
love
like
it.
blows your mind.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, no, we can't wait to see more of this. Well, guys, thank you for spending the time up here with us.
Thank you
at
for having
E3
us.
talking about Transference. Give it up for the team from SpectreVision and Ubisoft.